gang, welcome back to Rapid Flow. Today it's my pleasure to show you ZENSPHERE and walk you through the interface and give you an overview of how it works. But before we do that, I'm going to show you quickly how amazing it is when you have sounds that are all pre-mixed and pre-mastered coming straight out of your synth. So check this out. Right now we have this bass line running from ZENSPHERE, and we don't actually have any processing on it whatsoever. So let me show you this quickly. So this is the channel that ZENSPHERE is playing on. So if I solo this for a second, so that's the sound we're playing with. And if you have a look on the channel, the automation is being shown, but there's nothing behind it, and it's going straight to the main. And on the main, we just have a safety limiter, so we don't clip anything, and the sample grabber, which is sending signals over to the flux analyzer, which is what we use to check stuff here. So let's have a look and listen again how it sounds. Cool. So let's go through one or two more presets just to, give you a couple of different impressions. Let's go for some of these Swayman presets. Oh yeah, I'm digging that. Okay, let's have a quick listen just to the low end of this. So still just going straight to the main. The main has nothing on it except the safety limiter. What you can hear is that this sound coming out doesn't overwhelm the kick, doesn't overwhelm the low end, and it sits in the mix so that it's very easy to bring it forward and backward. You can just use like the gain for this here. And there's also a limiter inside. So if you want to compact it more, you have these kinds of tools available. So yeah, just to show you, to give you an idea of how amazing it is when your sounds just work in the mix straight out of the synth, because this track actually, it's pretty much like a track where I'm using our template so that it's a track that would be ready for pre-mastering or for release. So if I show it to you on the signal analyzer. As you could see, it's really loud, everything's already there, and still this bass patch is managing to cut through there, which was, always the goal with this. So the main part, I think, where you're going to be spending in the beginning a lot of time is on going through the patches. Up here in the top, you have direct access to all the raw waveforms which we captured from the synths, meaning that if you go in here, basically you go straight to the source. This is a really nice place to start, but you will also find categories of presets here that I'm in the process of making now, and then you can look just for something that works well for bass or a pad or an organic sound, acoustic sound, hooks, chords, all that stuff. So what do we have going on? The signal starts obviously in the source, which is the samples that we took from these 16 analog synthesizers. Actually, two of them are digital, but they sound really good nonetheless. And place them in this. They are sampled note by note, so there's not actually any stretching going on these samples, which is why it sounds so authentic. And all of it is pre-processed with all the outboard gear that you see here in the studio, which is why it sounds this way in the mix. You start with the sample, and from the sample, it goes through your amp envelope. It's always nice to mess around with the release a bit, because having it a little bit longer can add a lot to a sound without hopefully messing up and muddying up your mix too much. So check that out. So the next thing that the sound will hit is the VCF, the voltage controlled filter. And this, I'm sure you know, you have resonance and you have your frequency and 3 filter models. This one sounds the fattest. This one is like a low cut that is, a high cut, which is great also more for mid-focus stuff. And this is a high pass filter. With the gain, you can actually also really change how it sounds. Let me show you. You can get it a little bit more towards saturation. And sorry, my computer's lagging a bit because of the OBS capture and video capture and everything that's happening. But ZENSPHERE on its own uses like 1 to 2% CPU on my M1 MacBook Pro. So it's very CPU efficient because it's basically playing samples. Back to the filter. The way we implemented the voltage controlled filter ADSR is very interesting. It's a little bit different. If you switch this on, you will see that the frequency jumps to the top. And the reason for this is that that these two parameters interact with the frequency in such a way that it makes it much, much easier to find the groovy place for a bass line to really sound like it's gonna really like groove off of the kick drum. Let me show you. You can also shape how loud the attack portion will be. And once you've found a place where it feels like, okay, this is cool, you can still move the filter frequency manually to then fine tune it so it's maybe not too upfront in your mix. Let me show you. If you've done this with analog synths or most plugins, you'll realize how amazing it is to be able to do this so cleanly and so easily. So these parameters all interact in a way that makes it really fast and easy to be able to get super funky percussive grooves out of the bass oriented sample. So don't be surprised if this causes your frequency to jump. It's so that you can fine tune it easier. From the voltage controlled filter, we go to the delay. Now, because I'm a sound engineer and because I spend a lot of time cleaning delays, I wanted to do this delay in such a way that you can clean it in the delay very easily. Let me show you. We have a high pass filter and a low pass filter. So it's very easy to get your delay to be present and giving some groove, but not be totally overwhelming the whole sort of frequency content of your track and leaving the main bass line clean. Obviously, we have a wet, dry. It's very easy to try different timings with these little sliders. And then you can spread the delay to be more or less stereo. Let me show you. In essence, what this is doing, this is changing the micro timing a little bit. From the delay, it goes to the reverb, which I'm really happy about, came out really good. It's very easy again to use. You have a downsampling if you want to create more crunchy stuff. You have a width, you have a damping of the high frequencies. Of course, you have the wet. And a very important detail, the delay and the reverb wet amounts, as well as the saturation, do not remove the dry signal. I don't know why people do that. It's like a pet peeve of mine. I hate it when I bring in a delay and my wet signal disappears like it's a blend. I don't think that's the right way to do delay or reverb or anything really. Okay, so I've loaded a different patch. Let me show you what this reverb sounds like. And again, you have the possibility to fine tune how it sits against your original sound using a high pass and low pass filter. Like you can just get kind of the lower vibe, or you can keep it fully open. And what you will probably notice is the delay is not super obnoxious, like one of these massive, reverbs that just completely overwhelms your synth and your signal, and it basically fucks up your mix. It's tuned in such a way that it adds spaciousness and width and size without getting in the way of everything. So you may say, like, I didn't hear a difference. Let me take it out. You feel how the space around the synth is gone? So all of this stuff has been fine-tuned and sound engineered in weeks of work with our amazing developer, David, who was very patient with my obsessive approach to this and helped me realize this whole vision. David, you're a hero. Thank you. Okay, moving along from these effects, it will go to the saturation. So you can add additional saturation and harmonics to a sound and just get it also to be more upfront if for some reason it's not quite there where you want it. So the concept behind the interface of ZENSPHERE is to give you all the controls you need to make 90% of sounds that you will need in a track, but nothing more. Keep it as minimal as possible, as cognitive, minimal overload as possible, and as easy as possible to capture with one glance what's happening in your patch, which is why we use, in a lot of cases, these sliders and only in some places circular knobs. I also find sliders way easier to use with a mouse, which is why we made this choice. So as you can see, there's a lot going on. You have some effects, you have some saturation, a high pass filter, a limiter, voltage controlled filter, amp ADSR, VSF ADSR. and an arpeggiator, but still it feels very simple. However, you can take any sound sample that's in this library, you can turn it into anything with these parameters. And if you need more, of course, then you can load some plugins after this and then go that way. But like really the main things you will probably need for a lot of sounds are here. So the next thing the signal will hit is a high pass filter. Which, yes, cuts the low end of whatever sound is being triggered. And as you can tell, it's very clean. It's also cutting all the other reverbs and everything, which is actually, it sounds really nice. And then the next thing that the signal will hit is actually these parameters here, which is the gain, a vintage, which is kind of like a slop. It makes things a bit more wobbly. Either up or down a bit. On this patch, there's already a lot of wobble, but on a bass or something, you would hear it very clearly. Then there's actually a very cool thing you can do with the sampler pitch. This basically like the old days where you would sample sound double speed and then pitch it all the way down to save memory space on an Akai S1000. Those of you who have worked on one of those know what I mean. This is the same. It reduces the playback speed of the sample engine, which can lead to really cool artifacts when tuned lower. Let me show you. Or you can also double it. So I'm going to move it now to the top. And then we have a gain, which is the gain for the whole patch. When it's in the middle, it's the way it's tuned to work with the limiter and everything. But if you need a bit more gain, you can do it here. If you feel like you're overloading the limiter, if you're hearing like, hey, this sound is getting really compressed, you can take it down here. The mod wheel right now is hardwired to the filter. This is an early access version of the synth. We're still working on this. I actually want to make the mod wheel do an automated 4/4 sidechaining to the BPM of the DAW. Let me know if you think that would be a cool idea. I think it would be so nice to just open the mod wheel and immediately have any sound sidechain. So if that's something you want, we'll implement that. And then, of course, we have a pitch wheel with which you can, if I move this around a bit, you can pitch your sounds up and down. That's pretty standard stuff. So from this section here, we are now going to hit the limiter. And the limiter is just a one knob function. It's always on unless it's all the way at the top. But it's actually set to -1 dB full scale. So it's always protecting your output from clipping. The one thing I haven't shown you yet is the arpeggiator. So the arpeggiator is actually a very interesting deal. It has a lot of different possibilities. Of course, you have all the usual things that you know from the playback modes. You have a range from -2 to +4 octaves that it can play through. You have your timings here, which I think is a really nice way to be able to do this. You have a hold and on-off, but the nice thing is you can actually shift individual notes inside the arpeggiator using these sliders up and down 2 octaves. And if you stay in intervals that are, let's say, musically meaningful, you can get to really nice things. We have a hold function, which I don't use too often because right now it's not yet clock synced. We're working on that. Please bear with us. What I like to do actually is to set the octave to 2. And let me show you now what the arpeggiator will do. Let's have a listen to this together with a bit of the track. Let's take this an octave down. So yeah, this is like my personal favorite way of using this arpeggiator. So messing with these, you can move up and down 2 octaves. You can build really interesting, weird patches, even if you're using quite simple input for the arpeggiator. So that's it. That's an overview of ZENSPHERE and yeah, how it can be used, what the parameters do. what our thought was into making this and why it looks and functions the way it does. I hope this video was interesting, and I'm very much looking forward to your feedback on this. We've sent this to a few artists and people we know, friends of ours that are professional musicians, and the first feedbacks have been amazing. We're so happy to hear that they are loving the sound of it. I think one of the best compliments we got is that it sounds huge. So we hope that you agree with this. There is also a video on the channel which is just a playthrough of no talking, just presets. So if you want to check that out, then I'll link that in the description. And there's also a video where I show how I actually went through making one of the sounds. So if you want to actually see the whole artisan process of tuning synths and setting up the channels and the compressors and everything to actually then capture the synth with an automated software called Sample Robot, I'm going to link that also in the description. So if you want to dive deep into how these sounds came to be, then you'll have that to check out. Considering that this contains the sound of 16 of the best synthesizers on the market, plus all the hardware that you see here in the studio, I think what we're asking for, this is a steal. I hope that this inspires you and helps you make amazing music and helps you get and stay into a flow state more. And we're looking forward to your feedbacks and comments and music that you make with this. All right, take it easy. See you on the next video. Bye-bye.